It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, swinging, and all things about how you can have a secure and sexy relationship. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre. Hey, Andre.
Hey, Tara.
Oh, I have this thing on. All right, one more time. Hey, Andre.
Hi, Tara. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. Well, I'm super excited. I'm super excited today. Bye.
I'm back.
I'm super excited today because we are doing a very brand new episode of the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast. And so this week, we are diving into the topic, new relationship energy, the awesome and the awful. Ooh, sounds ominous.
It does sound ominous.
Well, I mean, we decided to do this topic because it's come up a lot in a lot of the conversations I've been having with different people who are joining our Let's Talk Polyamory community. And, I mean, new relationship energy, it's pretty exciting. Yeah. It's energetic, but it sometimes gets a pretty bad rap in polyamory because while one person may be experiencing these elated feelings of excitement and being with someone new, it sometimes happens that others that they're in relationships might feel left behind or jealous or find it threatening to the security of that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So here we have an established relationship and things are going pretty well. And then we decide, or maybe we've already decided that we're going to open up. But the thing is, it's familiar to us. We know that. And then suddenly one of us or both of us meet somebody else. And now something new happens and we get that NRE, that new relationship energy. There's even a chemical change that might happen in the brain chemistry. But the thing is, it happens, it's real. And all of a sudden, we may be delighted by it if we are the participant in it. But if we're the observer to it and outside of it, yes, it could definitely be very frightening. And, maybe our initial reaction is because it's new and unfamiliar. It might be kind of scary to us and we want to go away from it. But maybe we can find out ways to override that and see the benefits to it and see that it is actually an interesting phenomena that can happen. And how do we turn that possible fear into a positive?
Yeah, it's not all about putting out forest fires, which it may feel like sometimes. And I think that's why I want to talk about it. It can be a positive experience for all people involved. But before we totally jump in, we probably should do some introductions. So we are your hosts, T and A of the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast. And I'm Tara Lynn Franco. I'm a relationship and awesomeness coach.
And I'm Andre Turcotte. I am a registered psychotherapist and your partner.
Awesome. And so we're co-founders of this podcast, obviously, and we have an online community, which is where this all started, called Let's Talk Polyamory. So, and our passion since we started that has been to help individuals and couples navigate consensual non-monogamy and to open and create healthy and secure polyamorous relationships and create a community for people to discuss these things because, there's not a ton out there about this. And we want to spread a positive word, positive vibe, and create that supportive environment. And so part of the way we do this is through this podcast, the community, but also we have a couple services and programs that we started, including our Poly Newbies digital course and our deeper dive program, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery, where you get to work directly with us. So all this information and the links to everything will be on in the show notes. And today we talked about this over the weekend. We have a very special offer for you related to our digital course, which we're going to talk a bit about at the end, which is super exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah. So on to today's episode, let's begin by describing what NRE is.
Yeah, that's a good place to start at the beginning, right? Yeah. So NRE is that, I guess you call it that exciting rush of emotions that you feel when you get to know somebody new, right? It's that unfolding, that discovery part, right?
Yeah, it's like you know, when I've experienced this, it's all about like all you can think about is this other person and everything else. And what happens is like some of the other things in our lives sort of fall away, and even other relationships may pale in comparison. So it's why people often refer to this as like the honeymoon phase or puppy love, like where you start falling in love with a new person and become, in some ways, infatuated.
Mhm. It's such an interesting phenomenon, right? Because while we are still loving, or maybe want to remain loving with our current relationship, this new relationship offers us so much in the way of discovery and excitement, and the attention that we're getting from them, all these things. And I think that is one of the wonders of it, the beauty of it. But the potential pitfall is something that you mentioned. Do we then become so obsessed with it or preoccupied with it that we start to compromise other existing responsibilities or relationships? And we'll look at that a bit later as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, what's interesting, especially in the context of polyamory or open relationships, is that sometimes when we meet someone new, it like allows us to be like a little bit of a different person, like take on a different identity. And I think that's also gives it some power. Like we may no longer be wife, mother. We may be like sexy, exciting partner of somebody new, right? So taking on that new persona can also be very alluring. And so there was a great article we found online from Miss Smut Buttons. I love the name.
Yeah.
Who described, I mean, she's not the only one that did this, but described NRE as a drug that one can become
Mhm.
addicted to. You know, so when you spend, you know, hours glued to your phone, waiting for your next fix, texting frantically with this new person, your thoughts are sort of consumed with it. It sort of has that feeling like when you're on a roller coaster and it's very top and you're just about to drop, like that really like excited, you know, thing. You feel like supercharged with energy, electricity.
Mhm.
And in fact, NRE and falling in love does impact chemicals in the body,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Dopamine, adrenaline. There's a whole bunch of chemicals that are released, but it's interesting, right? Because it does seem to have a lot of the components of what we consider to be an addiction, right? The
Mhm.
obsession to it and that hit of chemicals. I mean, it's hard to resist it. It's so wonderful. Doesn't everybody want to fall in love? Doesn't everybody want to experience that
Mhm.
wonderful feeling, that elation that we get from it, the euphoria?
Yeah, euphoria. So the dopamine is, I think, what causes the
Right.
euphoria, and adrenaline, and this word I cannot pronounce properly, norepinephrine. That's responsible for that.
Right.
Like, do you know how to say it?
I always blunder it as well, especially when I'm put on the spot like this. But maybe our callers can call in.
Your
Nor
colors.
norepinephrine.
What did you
That's not
say?
quite right. No, I'm going to
You're just gonna pass.
excuse
Okay,
myself
you
from
can
that
pass. So, but those are the things that give you that like pitter patter of the heart, the restlessness, and the overall preoccupation that comes with NRE. And
one.
I mean, there's been studies done, MRI scans of people indicated that are in love that indicated that it lights up the pleasure centers of the brain. And so, you know, blood flows to those areas, which is the same part of the brain that is implicated in obsessive compulsive behaviors. So it
Uh,
could be why we tend to concentrate on little other than that source of our desire during the early stages of a relationship. So, it's, you know, and having said all that, it's, you know, new relationship energy is generally considered desirable and sometimes even indispensable in forming deep emotional bonds. It can be what bonds us at the beginning of a relationship, but it can also temporarily distort our perceptions and judgments. And so this may be taken into account.
mhm.
And so I think sometimes what happens when we meet someone new and we have that chemical reaction to them, we may like ignore things that maybe we should be paying attention to. If they, you know, oh, that doesn't bother me. Oh, that's so cute that they do this, right? And something that may become a problem later.
You know, Tara, it's interesting to consider also the invitation to NRE.
Yes.
So, and what I mean by that is that maybe you and I have an established relationship and it's good. We're very satisfied and we enjoy each other. But then one of us has this new relationship and we get all of this questions about us, like, well, when was the first time you thought this, and how did you do this, and all that interest that the other partner, through no fault of their own, might not still have that same high level of curiosity or the same devoted new attention to us. So in a way, I guess, when we don't do that in our established relationship, we become kind of comfortable in it, and may not be asking those same questions or that same level of curiosity or enthusiasm. So then when that new thing comes into it, it makes it seem like, wow, here I have all this. But in a sense, maybe it's because we weren't receiving enough of that in our current relationship. I wonder how we are still able to create or recreate NRE in our current and existing relationships.
Yeah, and that's something maybe we can talk a bit about in a bit, like
Yeah.
at the end. I think I wrote a couple things down, but I like
Oh.
that idea of like having curiosity again in your relationship. But you're right;
Mhm.
it's you're learning new things, and it's just everything is new, right? And and so that's really exciting. We love new things. We love variety, and that's the other thing. Like as humans, we value variety, and so I mean that goes across all things in our life. I was actually just talking with my friend this morning on our walk. We were talking about these workouts that we do online and how we love it when there's all different ones scheduled for the month rather than one specific instructor for the entire time because we value variety. Anyway.
But isn't that also one of the beauties of being an open relationship or polyamorous? Is
Mm.
that uh, some people, when they get into a monogamous relationship, they may have that new relationship energy once and only once in their lifetime, and then they are with their partner, and that's it. In a sense, we get the opportunity to constantly be rediscovered or rediscover the other person. So, in that
Mhm.
sense, it's a wonderful benefit. But to be the devil's advocate, if we do see this as potentially similar to an addiction, is there any danger that we might then become addicted to the NRE? And as soon as it wears off, we're kind of like, well, that's known to me, it's passe, and now I need that new hit.
Oh, that's interesting. That is actually an interesting part is that some people may be constantly searching for that hit, right?
Especially if you have what's possibly considered to be an addictive personality. Are you
Right.
always looking for that? And if that is the case, then could we find ways to temper it a bit and say, well, okay, I understand
Mhm.
the mechanisms behind it, and I don't want to simply always have to feel as though I have to go towards that, as opposed to feeling it is something that I participate in rather than feeling the need for or being pulled to it.
Yeah, like enjoy it in the moment, but not
Mhm.
necessarily allow it to lead your all of your actions. That's
Right.
interesting. I hadn't thought of that. It's
Mhm.
so smart.
Well, I think I do a great job of derailing the conversation a bit with other considerations. But let's see if we can get back to where we were going with this. We were just finished talking a bit about the chemical aspect of it.
Right, and that how it can temporarily distort your perceptions and judgments
Mm.
around things, and that you have to take that into account. And I think that's why, like people, you hear about people who like they meet someone and they fall in love, and it's this magical time, and they get married in like 1 day or 2 days or 4 days. So, would probably recommend against that because you may be impacted by that chemical that may be distorting um, your perception. It doesn't automatically mean that the attraction is unreal or will not last.
Right.
It may actually lead to something more long lasting
Mhm.
and strongly bonded. So yeah. So
But the idea is that we want to become aware of the potentials of this, right? So the possible implications or ramifications of this. We say to ourselves, "Well, I am experiencing this. It's a beautiful phenomena, but I'm also able to put it into context, knowing how it's going to last, how it will impact my current relationship. What is it like having this new person, and how do I feel about it in general on my own part?" But then also, I think another part that we talked about that I found very interesting is considering how it is for us, but then how it might be for our existing partner. And also, how is it if we are the new person coming into this?
yeah,
And
exactly.
there it is, right.
Yeah. So one of the terms that you found as well when we were doing some research, which is a variant of new relationship energy, is new relationship chemistry.
Mm,
I thought that was just interesting, just as a side note, because it's conceptually similar to NRE, but the idea is the emphasis is explicitly limited to the brain chemistry involved in creating those euphoric feelings, rather than the actions and rationalized feelings that might happen when you're in NRE. At least that's how it was described. I don't know. I just
mhm.
think that was an interesting side note.
It's very interesting, yes.
So then the question is, we talk about polyamory. This is called the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast. But then people are saying, is this just a polyamory thing?
Good
And
question.
so, I mean, I think we've already said this, but for those who identify as monogamous, um, NRE happens as well. I think it's just not referred to as often. So when you're more monogamously inclined,
Mhm.
it may or may not lead you to the next floor of the relationship escalator, as we call. So the
But
relationship.
I wonder, yeah, I wonder if the model itself, though, is lending itself more to polyamorous. So if you are monogamous, uh, is it less likely that you're going to have many new relationships? Whereas in
Mm,
polyamory, we're kind of inviting new relationships, right? We can be with our one partner. It's possible, but we might more likely, I think, more often, more frequently find more occasions, new occasions for starting these new relationships. And yeah, if we are monogamous, we get excited about feeling that person. But I think this NRE is really under consideration with the idea that it is coming from a point of having already been in an established relationship or joining somebody who's already in an established relationship
mhm.
and going, outside of that.
Yeah, so I think it's more frequently used in the polyamorous community because of that fact.
Mhm.
You have people who have multiple intimate relationships that are happening concurrently, and then
Right.
they're experiencing NRE alongside that. But I think what's interesting about monogamy and NRE, and I would, use my own personal experience. I think that when I was dating people, identified as monogamous, or I didn't really know anything differently, and I experienced NRE all the time, and I would get excited about meeting new people, and I was attracted to multiple people for different reasons. But then because of this idea of the relationship escalator, where you have to make a decision at some point which path you're going to take and who you're going to be exclusive with, I found myself in that position of having to decide between two very different people that I did have NRE with. And it was like, how do you choose? And I probably chose the person that I had the stronger NRE with, or that was the rational choice. And I made that decision actually not too long before I met you. And so it's just interesting to think back about that and how it might play in. And I never heard the term new relationship energy. I didn't know that's what I was
Mhm.
experiencing.
Right. Yeah, we definitely increase our vocabulary being in this milieu. But what's interesting is that in that monogamous relationship, how in the beginning, when you meet the person, you are excited to meet them and you have that new relationship energy. But then, if we are deciding to be monogamous, it seems to me as though we would kind of forbade receiving that experience. We will, if we get alerted to it, if we're excited by somebody else, it's disallowed, and we will try to not acknowledge it. Whereas in our relationship, for example, not only do we acknowledge it, but we might even encourage it with somebody else, saying, "Oh, I think it'd be great if you had another friend in your life, and you could have all of those wonderful things, the benefits of polyamory. That we can still go and experience love and discovery and fascination in other people, and it's not going to necessarily be disallowed in our relationship. That we invite that opportunity, as opposed to saying, "Well, I am your one and only forever," and we're not wanting to ever feel that NRE again. That we had that experience and that was for us, and now that is in a sense prohibited.
Yeah, and that
We
is
get,
the
we
hard
get to
part.
continue. Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
No, as polyamorous, I think that we get to continue the possibility of having NRE come into our life. And sometimes maybe, yeah, it's not so invited. Maybe it's our partner that's doing it, but it still exists as a possibility. Whereas in my understanding of monogamy, we're not generally going to really invite or experience NRE. It might uh, be considered more threatening to our current relationship.
Right. And from my own personal experience, you know this very well because we share things openly. I did experience someone I met and had that NRE. And I think they had that, even though we're not in a relationship, we had that excitement and chemistry and spark in that situation. But he's not in a position where he can act on it. It is forbade, as you say. And so that actually can be another issue with NRE, especially if you're polyamorous or meeting people who are already in established monogamous relationships or that want to be monogamous, that you can't pursue them. So,
Mhm.
and then that can become a bit of an addiction. When you can't have something, then you can become obsessed with that as well, which is difficult. So, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think in terms of NRE, for those who are non-monogamous, which is what we're talking about, is so when adjusting to and compensating in some ways to the contrast in the effect and the excitement between newer and older relationship is considered an important factor in
Mhm.
successfully balancing those relationships. So let's talk about, you started talking about this a bit earlier about how does it impact those involved.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think there's always considerations or things to navigate, whether you're the person experiencing the NRE with someone new, the new person that they're with, or people that they're in relationships with. So I think when I think about it, just to break it down to simpler terms, there's sort of like three different experiences, and
Mhm.
there may be more, and there may be multiple people in each of these experiences. So there's the person or people that are experiencing the NRE, the person they're in a new relationship with, so who may also be experiencing NRE, and then there's the people that are impacted by that. So using us as an example, like we were
Mhm.
talking through this earlier, like say you and I are in a relationship and I meet somebody new and I have NRE with them and we have this excitement. So there's there's me, there's the other person I'm with that may or may not be experiencing NRE. They may also have other partners. And then, you and I have a relationship as well, and you may have other relationships that are impacted because maybe you're unhappy about the NRE. So it could even be impacting your other relationships. So there's
Mhm.
lots of people potentially that are impacted
Mhm.
by
I wonder. I wonder if I'm negatively impacted if I'm having NREJ, new relationship energy jealousy
Oh, yes,
or
because
insecurity. Yeah.
jealousy is definitely
Mhm.
something that the person experiencing the NRE of their partner would feel. So they may feel jealous. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something they may feel, but they may also have feelings from the other end of the spectrum where they are feeling a lot of compersion and feeling delighted that their partner has somebody as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
and I often seem very supportive and enthusiastic with the idea that either one of us might find new friends in that way, that we like and invite the expansion of our possibilities.
yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be bad. And in
Mhm.
fact, we had an experience just this weekend when we were out and with somebody, and who was actually someone you were supposed to be having a date with. But anyways, I ended up there, long story. But then I was sort of flirting with the person at the shop, and you experienced it, and you were quite excited about it and interested in about it. And I think that the person that we were with had a really interesting experience of like observing that situation, because
Yeah.
I feel very secure in our relationship. So for me, you having strong NRE won't impact me as much. I'm not saying it won't, because it's probably been a while since either of us had really strong NRE with
Mhm.
someone, but probably impacts us a little bit less because we've built up our compersion muscle.
And we were able to build up our compersion muscle because we laid a very good foundation of open communication, right? So being able to talk about the feelings when they do come up, and no matter how we might feel that they are inappropriate or that we're shy about them or embarrassed or whatever it is, we continue to uh, avail ourselves to the possibility of opening up in talking about it in open relationships, open communication.
Yeah, I think communication is always like the number one thing we say that you need to
Mhm.
use to resolve situations. Like I don't know how many times I've said to clients and people in our course and our program, like, well, maybe this is something you need to talk about. And
Mhm.
how might you approach this conversation? Because, it's really the only way, I mean, the major way into resolving things. Obviously, we have to do inner work and that sort of thing. But I think opening up conversations is always a good way of working through things. So
Mhm.
yeah, so the person experiencing the NRA, their partner, can feel awesome. That would be the great thing, right? They could be excited, thrilled, but they may also feel jealous or unwanted. They may feel left out. They may feel insecure. They may even be concerned about the stability of their relationship. Because if you
Yeah,
see your
without
partner, what?
Yeah, without a doubt, right? Because here we are, we might have been established for a while and then decide to open up, and all of a sudden, wow, our partner is, receiving all these texts, or they're looking at their phone all the time, and it's like, wow, where's that going to leave us in our relationship? What happens if, this, that, and the other thing? So yeah, it could definitely create concern about the stability of our current relationship.
Mhm. And I think the other thing that can happen too is like you want like even if, especially if you've been doing this for a while, but not even necessarily, you want to be happy and excited about your partner. Like this is why you opened up. This is what
Right.
you agreed if you're in a relationship with someone. I'm talking about. This is what you agreed to. This is what you want and you want to be happy for them. But sometimes you're like, "Oh, I'm finding this so hard. Like why is this so hard? Why am I becoming obsessed with this or why is this different now?" I have a
Mhm.
client as well that is in the situation where they opened up from the start, like they decided they were going to be open from the beginning. But as their relationship grew stronger, their partner being with other people caused greater feelings of jealousy and that sort of thing because they're more invested in the relationship, right? So it seemed easier before, but it can change how you feel about things.
Absolutely. And then if we feel that there is change and we are uncertain about it or feeling insecure and concerned about the stability or maintaining our relationship, we might then either want to recoil from it and call the whole thing off or try and impart new rules to
Hmm.
govern it and create these appearances of greater security. Some of them may actually help, but some of them may be simply a response to the fear that we're experiencing.
Yeah. So I want to go back because I think we skipped over the person that's experiencing the NRE, although I feel like we've been talking about them a lot.
Mhm.
But, we said that they might shift attention and focus to the other person. They may become distracted. But the other thing that could happen with that person is they may feel guilty about those feelings. You
Mhm.
know, I don't want to feel like I feel guilty that I'm feeling good about this or that I really want to see this person or I'm constantly wanting to text them and I don't feel the same for my partner. I'm very excited to see this person, not as excited to see my other partner or partners. And we may be concerned about how it's impacting. They may see the impact, like if I'm feeling really jealous over you having NRE with someone, you may feel bad about that. You may feel like, how do I address this? But also I want to, have this other relationship. And then the other thing that could happen, if the feelings are so strong, you may even question your relationship with the person that you've been in with. And
Mhm.
so that can cause stress and confusion and that sort of thing. Because you're like, well, if I'm not feeling this way for my existing partner, does that mean we're not meant to be or that we don't love each other? Like, I love them, but I don't have this intense feeling and I should have this feeling, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It can open up a whole can of worms, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm actually, as I was saying that, this is what happens sometimes when we do these talks is I remember parts of my life. And so I'm thinking back to when I was married. And I got married fairly young at 24. And I ended up having an affair with somebody. And experienced that new relationship energy with them. And it did this exact thing that I'm describing here. I felt like it made me question how I felt about my partner.
Of
And
course.
in contrast, they felt like such different people, and everything was exciting with this person. And they're exactly the type of person that I wanted to be with, and that sort of thing. And my husband was like, not doing this, not doing that, not fulfilling my needs. And now that I think about it, and then the other person I ended up having the affair with ended up being like a terrible person.
But
Um,
but that's interesting, right? Because we're in the current relationship, we meet this other person, and then we often will compare the new person to our old person, the old person to our new
oh,
person. It's like,
yeah.
well, they don't do this, they don't do that. But also, in all fairness, we might not know the new person well enough yet. Let's see what they're like after 18 months when the honeymoon phase kind of is expired, and they are probably much more similar than dissimilar to the current one, right? So, will they always have this shiny new thing to them, this shiny new toy feeling to them, or will that kind of wear off and then we'll see them a little bit more realistically in a way? So is NRE kind of sampling a feeling of over optimism or that it's not yet known, and that's why it's easier to project all these wonderful things on the other person? They may have all these qualities, but do we overemphasize it because it's new and unknown? And do we look at the other one, the current one, as too familiar and kind of like, well, they don't do this anymore, they don't do that anymore?
Yeah, and for me, I was really focusing on the characteristics this person had that
Mm.
were the things that I was missing in my relationship. But completely ignored, didn't see, wasn't aware of some other characteristics which were not so great, like some anger things, and that they were a very jealous person and controlling. And my husband wasn't any of those things. He was a
Mhm.
beautiful, kind, caring soul. And so I mean, and that relationship maybe wouldn't have worked regardless. It probably wouldn't have. But it's curious to think if I could have turned things around, and or if we were open, if I could have experienced that new relationship energy and still had this relationship with my husband. Anyway.
That's one of the beauties of it also, right? So if we have a current relationship and maybe, there's no complaints, there's nothing that really needs to be tweaked or altered, and we're overall very satisfied. But having this new person does create this, I don't know, this almost je ne sais quoi feeling of making us feel seen again, of important again, of the discovery, of being discovered, all those wonderful things that no matter how much our wonderful current partner might try, it'll never be new again. It'll never be that first kiss again. And those things are rather exciting. And being in a polyamorous relationship, open relationship, it does. The potential of it does seem still possible, that we could still have these things and enjoy the benefits of it without feeling as though it's going to totally wreck or decimate our current relationship.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
absolutely.
wonderful. Mm.
It is kind of wonderful. Okay, and so then the third experience is the person who's in the relationship with the person who's experienced NRE. It's hard to describe. And so they may or may not be experiencing
Mhm.
NRE. If they're experiencing NRE as well, then they might, and they are in other relationships, they may be having issues, or they may having similar concerns with their partner, right? Like there's a lot of potential impacts here. Um, but I think they may feel the impact of others imparting new rules or limitations on their relationships. So it wouldn't be, if I had $1 every time somebody said that, um, you know, uh, they met somebody and they were enjoying their relationship, and then the partner of that person was jealous and didn't like things, so they started limiting how often they could see each other, and then
Mm.
they all out vetoed them and that sort of thing. So there definitely can be some impacts to the person that they're in relationship with.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then what is the impact and fallout from something like a veto, right? So is
Mhm,
it going to make your partner sympathetic to your feeling the need for having this veto? Maybe you're feeling insecure by it or threatened by it. Or is your
mhm,
partner going to resist that and say, you have no right to veto me or limit me, and make them want to go even further to the other person? Well, my current partner wants to put limits on me. This other person just simply wants to explore me and discover me.
mhm,
So it's,
mhm,
it creates a worse phenomena than it's like the insecurity that we might have had and wanting that reassurance might in fact kind of push the person away, depending on how we approach it.
mhm,
Because if we do the veto, to me that seems as though it's been announced and then that's it. It doesn't really lend itself to more exploration or curiosity to find other ways to address the feelings of insecurity. It's something that's put in place as kind of like a safeguard. Let me just build a wall, that way I can feel safer. But it doesn't really go to the inner feelings of, why should I feel the need to have a wall?
absolutely. I think vetoes is actually an interesting topic. Maybe not to delve in too much right now, but I know some people, in order to feel secure in the relationship and opening existing relationship that was monogamous, often will put in an allowance for vetoes.
Mhm.
So where one person can say, no, you can't date this person. And I I have some feelings about vetoes.
I know you do. But
I don't I don't love them. I don't think they're a great idea. I think it causes more problems than it gains, I guess, in so many
mhm.
different ways.
And yet, I think many people would argue the benefits to vetoing, right? Saying, well, maybe it's not ideal, but at the moment, it does help me feel as though I have some kind of voice in this, that I can create these safeguards when I am feeling overwhelmed by it, when it is too much for me, when I do need to step back and feel as though there's something, some buffer, some device that's going to help support me, help me feel more secure. But the thing is it sustainable? Is it going to serve us well in the long run? Or are there other alternatives? Can we find other ways where we feel as though it's not as necessary, that we feel more secure inside and in our relationship.
Well, exactly. And I think in those circumstances, it would be better, people would be better served to you could take a step back and say, take a pause in engaging in these relationships to work through things that maybe you haven't worked through before, and
Mhm.
to talk through them with the idea that, like, a limited time that you do that work in that time, not that you're just going to take a break and then, try it again in a month or that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Anyways,
So
veto.
if you're if I'm understanding you correctly, you're not really loving the pause or withdrawing from it if we're not processing it. If we're simply just taking a pause and just taking time out, there may be benefits to it, but it's not really moving the needle on this. It's not really addressing the issues that are coming up. So if we do pause, how are we going to spend our time in that pause? What are we going to do to process this, to unpack this, to get a better understanding of it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I do, because I think if you pause and then you just say, okay, I'll probably feel better in a month, you're probably not going to feel better in a month. You know,
Not if you
just
haven't done anything to explore those feelings that were coming up.
like if you veto someone, it's just going to be one person, and the next person you may have the same feelings, and you haven't actually resolved what it is about that situation that makes you feel that you need to say to your partner that you don't think that they should be in the relationship with that person. But anyways.
I hope we're not painting a picture of NRE as being this totally dangerous thing or not wonderful, because I think it's not all bad, right?
That's correct. It's not all bad. And so I actually have that in our notes. Is it all bad? No. I don't think that, NRE means that partners are doomed to hurt each other. Like we said before, there's a lot of positive things that can come out of it, and it's totally possible to manage it effectively. And I think, again, this is something we always advise as well. The first step is simply being aware of the phenomenon, being
Mhm.
aware that you're in NRE, or that your partner's NRE, because I think you have something to work from, because it happens. It's normal. It's a predictable response to a new relationship.
And we can speak firsthand after 7 years of knowing each other. We've had many people come into our lives where we felt NRE on both sides of it. And we've also been that third person in other people's NRE.
That exactly. It can
Mhm.
breathe life into relationships in some way. And even one of my clients recently said to me is that their partner is experiencing NRE with a new partner, and they're having a bit of a hard time with it. But they said, for a while it was sort of okay, because it said that they said that it enhanced their sex life,
Oh, interesting.
because
Mhm.
their partner feels desired and sexy again, and so they bring
Ah,
that sexiness and desire back into the relationship.
sounds
And so
ideal.
so it is a positive thing.
Mm.
And I mean, we used to talk about not quite the same as NRE. I guess it's short-term NRE, going to parties and events and clubs and stuff. We
Mm.
would always come back and be excited to be with each other. We'd just been with other people, been in a sexualized environment, and we come back and feel like excited and wanting to engage as together.
Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon on its own. But what can we do if we are the person experiencing the NRE?
Okay. So I think we're all ultimately responsible for managing our own
Right.
reactions, emotional reactions. But I think if we're experiencing NRE, it's important to be compassionate and taking responsibility for our own behavior, being aware of what we're doing, and then mitigating any effects. And also creating a safe space for honest dialogue about it. So
Mhm.
allowing a safe space for your partner to talk about it, so that they don't have resentments building up.
Mhm. I love your response to that. Yes, we acknowledge that it is a phenomenon, that it can happen to either one of us or any of the people, any of the players in there. But then that we might also be compassionate about it. I like the sound of that, because, as we mentioned earlier, maybe we get swept up in it, and I'm not even aware of it, but I'm constantly on my phone looking to see if I got a message back from them, or we're texting each other. And what's that like for the observer? So if we're in a relationship that's established already, and suddenly you see me blossom into this thing, am I going to be uh, aware Am I going to be compassionate? Am I going to be considerate of how that might be impacting my current relationship? So we don't say that we're not allowed to have this. We're not going to allow ourselves to have this, but we might also be cognizant of how is it impacting others around us? How would we feel if the other one is? So yes, I want you to be engaged in this and go for it and have all the fun you can and do that. But at the same time, can it be done in a way that is considerate or compassionate towards your existing partner or new partners?
Absolutely. I love
I
that.
think, yeah,
Yeah, I think it can. I think it can for sure. And
sure.
so then if you create that safe space and you are compassionate about it, then it allows your partner, the person being impacted the NRE, to share how they feel it is impacting them.
Right.
So for example, like someone I was talking to was talking about how their wife is always on their phone and texting in front of them like all the time. And
Mm,
they find it like very triggering to see that all the time. So one of the things we talked about that they could maybe talk to them about is, when they're doing certain activity, like maybe there's a time for that. Like if we're going out and going for dinner, or if we're having an experience and we're deciding on having some quality time together, then we put our phones away and we don't engage in those conversations. Like let's really be present in the moment when we're with our other partners. I think that would go a long way.
I think you're right, but I want it to be almost like an invitation to participate, or in this case, maybe participate less with the other one in
Mhm.
texting it, but not that it feel as though it is a prohibition or that we're impacting some veto that says you're not allowed to do this, but that we, as the other person, would consider how it might feel if we were in the opposite position,
Mhm.
right? How we might be considerate. Well, how would I feel if we were at dinner and they were always on their phone texting this new person? So we
Mhm.
have consideration for our partners.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And if
I
we
think that's always a good measure. Hmm?
No, go ahead. I
I
thought
think
you were
it's always a good measure in relationships, even outside of polyamory, just in general, to consider how the other person might be impacted by this. What are they going to feel, and how would we feel about that then?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so if you are being impacted by NRE and you're feeling jealousy, same things that we would normally suggest for those things is consider what's informing those decisions. Like what
Mhm.
information, what data, what stories you're telling yourself about that, and just do some, introspection around that, as well as when you're feeling those moments, if your partner's out on a date with this person and you know that they're having this NRE exciting experience, really taking time for self-care, building self-esteem, and even having some understanding that if you were in this again, if you were in the reverse situation, that you would want to be enjoying that experience as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of that I think is going to also be helped by having open communication, as we always say, right? So a nonviolent communication, finding ways to really talk about what's coming up for us and how
Mhm.
it's impacting us, what we're feeling about it, but in a way that feels safe to have these kind of conversations.
Yeah, so nonviolent communication, just as a reminder, being like it's like a four-step thing. So sharing like what the circumstance is. So when this happens, and that's the factual part of the situation. So when you're on the couch all the time, well, maybe not say all the time, when you're on the couch on your phone, smiling at it, I feel. So how you feel? I feel
I mean,
not important, distant. What I would like is, so what your need is and your request. And so that's sort of the nonviolent communication method. And we've talked about it that in other
right.
podcasts.
And then as a recipient, I would start off by saying, thank you for sharing. And if I'm understanding you correctly, what I'm hearing from that is that when this happens, you feel or have experienced this, and then we go from there. So you'll
Absolutely.
state your point,
Hmm.
and without layering it, without stacking. And
Hmm.
then I will acknowledge what's been said. I will reiterate to find out the accuracy of what I've understood. Is that in fact correct? Is that what you're trying to convey?
Hmm.
Right?
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
how we have attuned communication, which is something that we
Yeah.
teach as well in our programs. So
Mhm.
So then there's that other person that's in the relationship with your person who's having NRE. And so for them, if they are experiencing impacts from the other relationship, it might be a time to be very clear about your boundaries around these
Um,
things, around, and, like canceling dates or imparting new rules, or, they may want to say that, want to be involved in any agreements that might impact them. or have a say, or at least be aware of them so that they consent to them happening. And then, of
Mhm.
course, being aware of any red flag behavior, like imparting rules, changing things, and just being conscious of that. And which is hard to do if you really like the person, but then you're seeing all this, you may want to be with them and, may not want to enforce your boundaries, sort of thing.
Mhm.
All
So what are
right.
some of the other things that we can do? How can we bring NRE into our other relationships?
Yeah, and I think you touched on that a bit. I think if you're having NRE with somebody new, then in bringing things like planning things to get excited about.
In our
So
current
in
relationship.
our current relationship,
Mhm.
like making things anew, like not just because I think what happens when we're in our new relationship with someone, we'll go on the internet and look up cool things to do and go do them, but we may not do that with our existing partners, right? So having the same kind of sort of zest and planning and that sort of thing, and that sort of thing.
I think that's great. So again, we come into it with the awareness of it. So we say, well, I most people might have a tendency to research things and get excited about planning dates and that with the new person, but
Mhm.
am I still maintaining that or doing that with my current? And uh, shouldn't it be kind of fair in that sense? So if I'm not doing that, maybe it is an opportunity to observe that and say, well, maybe I should also plan a date with my current partner and uh, allow for that energy. Again, it's almost kind of like doing things outside of our comfort zone or doing things we haven't done before. We get an opportunity to rediscover new things about our current partner.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love about our relationship. I feel like we do that all the time. And and that goes to just regular aspects of life and discovering new things, but also intimate things like trying new things and shifting patterns and that sort of thing. Because I think it's important to keep variety in your current relationships. I was going to give the example as well, where this whole planning things to get excited about thing happened with some couple that I worked with, and they, because of the nature of where their husband's new partner lived, they live farther away. They would go away for a couple of days and have an overnight, and then come back. And so there would be a lot of anxiousness on the part of my client leading up to that and their partner going away. And so one of the strategies we talked about is planning something for when they, like, before, or having some connection time before, but also planning something to get excited about when they return. So you're not fixated on what's happening in that weekend, but rather getting excited maybe about what's coming up. So, yeah. So putting that same sort of energy back into your other relationships. So,
Mhm. Wonderful.
so that's NRE, a lot about NRE.
There's a lot to be said about it, but it's a lot of different feelings come up, a lot of different aspects to it. Being the on either side of it, how we might feel about it, and then what are the things that we can do to invite it or maintain it, monitor it, right, to regulate it if it is feeling too much at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I think with NRE, the goal is for everyone to enjoy that experience and
Mhm.
everyone to benefit from it. That's really would be amazing. The person in the new relationship and the person that's in the existing relationship having the awesome side benefits of that. So, yeah.
Right, without having to be overly concerned that it is going to be negatively impacting existing relationships. And I think again, you and I are wonderful examples of that because in the time that we've been together, we have had uh, NRE on both sides, and it is not only survivable, but it has been looking back as wonderful moments. Right, the discovery of those things, being polyamorous, being open like this, we are afforded that possibility, and it is always recurring. There's always that next possible new meeting of people, and it doesn't have to, be threatening or decimate the current relationship.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right. So we said at the beginning that we were going to share something really special at the end, and so we love this community. We love doing this podcast, and so happy that so many new people are
Mhm.
discovering us. But we really want to be able to spread the word about polyamory and normalize it as a valid relational identity. Yeah,
Yeah,
one that. So,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, it's a topic that I get really excited about. The normalization or the viability of being anything other than monogamous. And I'll say for me, my experience of monogamy has been that it is like the only way. I see it on dating profiles where people say, well, when are you going to grow up and get a real relationship? And it kind of makes it as though the way we relate is not valid, it's not viable, it is in any way perverse. And yet our relationship and the people we know who participate in this are very loving, caring people. And it is another option, another way of relating that's just as valid. So I think it's so critically important that we do help to normalize aspects of polyamory, of open relating.
Yeah, normalize it as a valid relational identity, but also that it can be just as secure and long lasting, and maybe even longer lasting than monogamous relationships, because you're not putting in barriers that tend to get in the way of things lasting. And so, in order to, help you and to encourage people to learn more, we've decided to reduce the profit that we have on our Poly Newbies digital course, so that more people can access it. This valuable resource. I'll just put this up on the screen. And so this is a very special link, and I'll put it in the show notes. So instead of saying Poly Newbies course, it's Poly Newbies special offer. So we want people to we spent time on this course. It's a great one. We would love to share it with more people, and want to make sure it's as accessible as possible to you. And so so share the link, share the podcast. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. It's rewarding for us, and we hope it's helpful for you. Are you laughing at me?
You're cute.
I'm cute.
You are.
So if you have no other people who would benefit from this, please share, like, and follow, and give us a review. It all helps other people find us and spread the word of polyamory and open relationships. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for all this, Tara.
All right. Thank you for being an awesome co-host.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye. Bye.